My husband said I was overreacting about how much time he spent with our nanny. Then our 3-year-old called her Mama at my own birthday dinner. The words hit me like cold water. Everyone at the table froze. My mother-in-law stopped mid-bite. My sister put down her fork. Nathan just laughed it off. Kids say the funniest things, don't they, Becca? But it wasn't funny. Not when our nanny Violet had started arriving earlier and staying later. Not when she'd begun choosing Charlotte's outfits and doing her hair in elaborate braids I'd never learned to make. Not when my daughter ran to Violet first thing every morning, arms outstretched, ignoring me completely. I'd hired Violet 8 months ago when I went back to work as a financial analyst. She came with perfect references, spoke fluent French, and had a degree in early childhood education. She was everything I wasn't. Patient where I was frazzled, creative where I was practical, present where I was increasingly absent. Nathan praised her constantly. She's so good with Charlotte. She really gets kids. You're lucky we found her. The real issue started when I noticed small changes. Charlotte's favorite foods shifted to things Violet made. Her bedtime routine became Violet's songs and stories instead of mine. When I tried to rock her to sleep like I used to, she'd cry for Violet. My own daughter preferred the nanny. At first, I told myself I was being insecure. Working mothers deal with this. It's normal to feel guilty. But then Nathan started taking Violet's side in every disagreement. When I suggested we didn't need her on weekends, he said I was being unreasonable. When I asked why she needed a key to our house, he said I was being controlling. When I mentioned her clothes were getting more expensive and fitted, he said I was being jealous. Maybe I was. Maybe watching another woman mother my child while my husband defended her was making me crazy. After the birthday dinner incident, I started documenting everything. I came home early one Tuesday and found Nathan and Violet laughing in the kitchen while Charlotte napped. They weren't doing anything inappropriate, but the ease between them felt wrong. The way he touched her shoulder, the way she looked at him. I checked our bank statements that night. Nathan had been Venmoing Violet money beyond her salary. Dinner reimbursements, gas money, a bonus for exceptional care. When I confronted him, he exploded. You're being paranoid. She takes Charlotte places. She deserves compensation. But I'd never approved these payments. I didn't even know about them. I hired a private investigator. The photos came back within 2 weeks. Nathan and Violet at a park with Charlotte, looking like a perfect little family. Nathan and Violet having coffee while Charlotte was at music class. Nathan and Violet entering a hotel at 2 p.m. on a Thursday when he'd told me he had a work conference. I confronted him with the evidence. He didn't even try to deny it. We fell in love, he said simply. Violet understands me in ways you never did. She actually wants to be home with Charlotte. You chose your career. I felt my world crack open. And what about our daughter? I whispered. Charlotte needs stability. She needs a mother who's present, he said. His words were surgical, designed to hit every insecurity I had. The divorce papers came within days. He was asking for primary custody, claiming my work schedule made me an unfit mother. His lawyer painted me as cold and career-obsessed while Nathan and Violet provided the warm, nurturing home Charlotte deserved. My own parenting was being used against me. Then my lawyer called with news that made my blood run cold. Nathan had filed a petition to allow Violet to legally adopt Charlotte as a second mother. And he had text messages I'd sent to my sister, complaining about how hard it was to balance work and motherhood, admitting sometimes I resented coming home to chaos when I was exhausted. He was building a case that I didn't want to be a mother at all. The custody hearing is in 2 days. This morning, I picked up Charlotte from Nathan's house, and she barely looked at me. The hearing room smelled like old wood and desperation. I sat beside my lawyer, Angela, watching Nathan and Violet enter together. They looked like the perfect couple. Violet wore a modest blue dress and minimal makeup. Nathan had his hand on the small of her back, protective, possessive. Charlotte sat between them, playing with a stuffed rabbit Violet had given her. My daughter hadn't brought the rabbit I'd bought her, the one we'd named together, the one that used to go everywhere with her. The judge was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and reading glasses that made her eyes look enormous. She reviewed the files in front of her with an expression I couldn't read. Nathan's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a devoted father whose wife had emotionally abandoned their family for her career. He submitted my work calendar showing late nights and weekend commitments. He read aloud the texts I'd sent my sister during particularly hard weeks. I don't know if I can do this anymore. Charlotte won't stop crying and I have a presentation at 7 a.m. I just want to sleep. Is it terrible that sometimes I miss my old life? Hearing my own words read in that courtroom felt like being flayed alive. The context was gone, the exhaustion, the isolation, the desperate need for someone to tell me I wasn't failing. All that remained were the ugly parts. The judge's expression didn't change, but I saw her make a note. Then came Violet's testimony. She was poised and soft-spoken. She described how she'd bonded with Charlotte immediately, how the little girl would cry when her mommy was late coming home, how she'd started having nightmares about being left alone. I wanted to scream that Charlotte had never had nightmares before Violet arrived, that my daughter used to run into my arms every evening, but Angela squeezed my hand under the table. Let them finish, she mouthed. Violet talked about the daily routine she'd established, the French lessons, the music classes, the organic meals, the enrichment activities. She made it sound like Charlotte's life before her had been devoid of structure or care. When asked about her relationship with Nathan, she blushed prettily. We didn't plan to fall in love. It just happened. We were both there for Charlotte during times when her mother couldn't be. We became a family naturally. I wanted to vomit. Nathan's testimony was worse. He talked about coming home to a cold house, A wife who was always on her laptop or phone. A daughter who begged for her daddy because mommy was too tired to play. He made me sound like a stranger living in my own home. The worst part was that some of it was true. I had been exhausted. I had worked long hours. I had sometimes chosen sleep over tea parties. But I'd also been the one who researched preschools for months, who took Charlotte to every doctor's appointment, who knew her shoe size and her favorite color and how she liked her sandwiches cut. I'd been present in the ways that mattered, hadn't I? When it was my turn, I could barely speak. Angela led me through questions about my career, my relationship with Charlotte, my daily involvement in her life. I tried to explain that I'd been struggling to balance everything, that I loved my daughter more than anything, that I'd hired Violet to give Charlotte quality care, not to replace me. My voice cracked when I described the birthday dinner, how it felt to hear my own child call another woman mama. She's confused, I said. She spent so much time with Violet that she's mixing up roles. But I'm her mother. I've been her mother since the day she was born. Nathan's lawyer cross-examined me aggressively. He brought up every late night, every missed bedtime, every time I'd asked Nathan to handle Charlotte because I was overwhelmed. He made my humanity look like neglect. Then he asked the question I'd been dreading. Ms. Becca, do you resent being a mother? No, I said immediately. Never. But you texted your sister saying you sometimes wished you could go back to your life before Charlotte was born. I was having a hard day. Every mother has those thoughts sometimes. It doesn't mean I don't love my daughter, but you do wish things were different. I wish I could be everything Charlotte needs. I wish I didn't have to work 60-hour weeks to pay our mortgage. I wish I'd seen what was happening before it was too late. The courtroom went silent. The judge called a recess. I spent it in the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face and trying not to cry. Angela found me there. You're doing fine, she said. But we need to address the adoption petition. That's what's really dangerous here. She explained that if the judge granted Nathan primary custody and allowed Violet to adopt Charlotte as a second mother, my parental rights would be effectively diminished. I'd become a visitor in my daughter's life. Every major decision would go through Nathan and Violet. Medical care, education, religion, where Charlotte lived, everything. Can they really do that? I asked. If the judge believes it's in Charlotte's best interest, yes. When we returned, the judge asked to speak with Charlotte privately. My heart stopped. My daughter was only 4 years old. What would she say? Would she choose Violet over me? 20 minutes passed, then 30. When the door finally opened, Charlotte came out holding the judge's hand. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. The judge didn't reveal what they'd discussed. Instead, she asked both legal teams to present their final arguments. Nathan's lawyer went on about stability and primary attachment figures. He argued that Charlotte's bond with Violet was now stronger than her bond with me, that disrupting this relationship would be harmful to the child's development. He submitted an evaluation from a child psychologist who'd spent exactly 1 hour with Charlotte, and concluded that she showed signs of anxious attachment to me and secure attachment to Violet. I'd never even met this psychologist, never been told Charlotte was being evaluated. Angela objected, but the damage was done. Then it was our turn. Angela stood and her voice was steady and clear. Your Honor, this case is not about whether Becca is a perfect mother. It's about whether working mothers have the right to be mothers at all. Becca has provided for her daughter financially and emotionally since birth. She made the difficult decision to return to work to ensure Charlotte's future security. She hired who she believed was a qualified caregiver to supplement her care, not replace it. What happened here is a betrayal of that trust. Nathan and Violet developed a romantic relationship while Violet was employed in Becca's home, caring for Becca's child. They systematically undermined Becca's relationship with Charlotte. They encouraged the child to call Violet Mama. They created a situation where Charlotte's natural attachment to her mother was disrupted and redirected. The adoption petition is particularly concerning. It would essentially reward Nathan and Violet for their affair by granting them legal control over Charlotte while diminishing Becca's parental rights. This is not in the child's best interest. This is about two adults who want to legitimize their relationship by erasing the child's mother. The judge listened without expression. Then she said she would issue her ruling within 10 days. 10 days to find out if I'd lost my daughter forever. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I kept replaying every moment of the hearing, every question, every answer, every look on the judge's face. My sister stayed with me, making sure I ate and showered. She'd taken time off work to be here. Unlike our parents, who'd called the situation unfortunate but advised me to consider what was best for Charlotte, as if giving her up to my ex-husband and his mistress was somehow the selfless choice. On day 4, I went to Charlotte's preschool to pick her up for my scheduled visit. Nathan had agreed to 2 hours supervised by Violet. The indignity of it made me want to scream. Supervised visits with my own child in my own ex-home, but I needed to see her. When I arrived, Charlotte was on the playground. She saw me and her face lit up. Mommy! She ran toward me and I caught her, holding her so tight she giggled and said I was squishing her. For those 2 hours, everything felt normal. We played with her dollhouse. I braided her hair, not as elaborately as Violet did, but Charlotte said she liked it better because I didn't pull. We had a tea party with her stuffed animals. When it was time for me to leave, Charlotte clung to my leg. Don't go, she whispered. I don't want you to go. Violet appeared in the doorway. Come on, sweetie. Mommy has to leave, but I'm making your favorite dinner. Charlotte's grip loosened. She looked between us, confused. Then she let go and walked to Violet. I left before they could see me crying. That night, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I drove by the house, my house, the one Nathan and I had bought together. the one I'd been forced to leave because Nathan's lawyer had gotten a temporary order giving him exclusive use of the marital home. I sat in my car across the street, watching through the windows. I could see them in the kitchen. Nathan was cooking while Violet set the table. Charlotte was drawing at the counter. They looked like a family, a complete unit, like I'd never existed at all. I watched Nathan lean down and kiss Violet, watched Charlotte show them her drawing, watched them praise her and stick it on the refrigerator where my daughter's artwork used to hang when it was my family. I drove back to my sister's apartment and cried until I couldn't breathe. On day 6, Angela called with an update. She'd found something in Violet's background check. The references she'd provided when I'd hired her, 2 of them were fake. The phone numbers went to disconnected lines. The 3rd reference was real, but the woman claimed she'd never heard of anyone named Violet. She'd been a reference for someone named Isabel, a nanny she'd fired after 2 months for boundary issues. Did Nathan know? I asked. That's what we need to find out. If he knowingly helped Violet falsify her credentials, it shows a pattern of deception. It might change how the judge views their claims of acting in Charlotte's best interest. We filed an emergency motion to present new evidence. The judge agreed to hear it. This time, when we entered the courtroom, Nathan looked nervous. Violet's confidence had cracked. Angela presented the evidence methodically. The fake references, the disconnected phone numbers, the real woman who'd fired Isabel/Violet for becoming inappropriately involved with the family. Violet took the stand and tried to explain. She'd changed her name legally after a bad relationship. The references were from her old life and she'd lost touch with some people. The boundary issue was a misunderstanding, but Angela pressed her. She got Violet to admit that she'd started working for us using a partially fabricated resume, that Nathan had known about the name change but not the fake references. Did you tell Nathan you'd been fired from your previous position for boundary issues? Angela asked. No, why not? I didn't think it was relevant. I was good at my job. Becca and Charlotte were happy with my care. Were they? Or did you systematically work to replace Becca in Charlotte's life from the beginning? Violet's composure finally broke. I gave Charlotte what she needed, a mother who was actually there. Becca was never home. Someone had to step up. The judge cut in. Ms. Violet, are you saying you intentionally worked to supplant Ms. Becca as Charlotte's primary maternal figure? Violet realized her mistake. She backtracked, but the damage was done. The judge's expression had shifted. She called another recess and asked to see Angela and Nathan's lawyer in her chambers. They were gone for over an hour. When they returned, the judge made an announcement. Given the new evidence regarding Ms. Violet's employment history and credibility, I'm issuing a temporary order modifying the custody arrangement. Effective immediately, Charlotte will reside primarily with her mother, Becca. Nathan will have supervised visitation pending further evaluation. The adoption petition is denied. I couldn't breathe. Did she just say what I thought she said? The judge continued. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full custody evaluation by a court-appointed psychologist. Both parties will participate. We will reconvene in 60 days to review the findings and determine permanent custody arrangements. Ms. Violet, you are prohibited from any contact with the minor child during this period. Violet stood up, her face white. You can't do that. Charlotte needs me. Sit down, Ms. Violet, or I'll hold you in contempt. The judge's voice was ice. Charlotte needs stability and honesty. 2 things you have failed to provide. Nathan tried to argue, but his lawyer shut him down. The ruling was made. I could pick up Charlotte that evening. I left the courtroom in a daze. My sister was waiting outside, and when I told her what happened, she screamed and hugged me so hard we both almost fell over. But it wasn't over. Not really. That evening, when I arrived to get Charlotte, Nathan was waiting with her packed bags. His face was red, and his hands were shaking. You think you've won, he said quietly. But Charlotte loves Violet. She's going to cry for her every night, and there's nothing you can do about it. He wasn't wrong. The first night Charlotte was home with me, she asked where Violet was. I tried to explain that Violet wouldn't be coming over anymore. Charlotte's face crumpled. But I need her, she sobbed. Who's going to do my hair? Who's going to make my special pancakes? I'll do your hair, I said. We'll learn together, and I'll make pancakes. Maybe not the same ones, but we'll find new favorites. She cried herself to sleep that night, and the next, and the next. I spent those early days terrified I'd made everything worse, that in fighting for custody I'd traumatized my daughter further, but slowly things began to shift. Without Violet's constant presence, Charlotte started remembering our old routines. The songs I used to sing, the games we used to play, the special way I'd tuck her in with her blankets arranged just so. One morning, she climbed into my bed at dawn. Her hair was a mess, and she was clutching the old rabbit I'd bought her, the one that had been abandoned in favor of Violet's gift. Mommy, she whispered. I love you. Those 3 words healed something broken inside me. The court-appointed psychologist, Dr. Hammond, started his evaluation in week 2. He was a grandfatherly man with kind eyes and a gentle way of asking questions that didn't feel like interrogation. He spent hours with Charlotte, with me, with Nathan. He visited our homes, observed our interactions, talked to Charlotte's teachers and doctors. He asked me about the texts I'd sent my sister, the ones Nathan's lawyer had used against me. I explained that I'd been drowning, that I'd needed to vent to someone safe, that expressing frustration didn't mean I didn't love my daughter. He nodded and made notes. He asked about my work schedule. I'd already started making changes. I'd talked to my boss about shifting to a flexible arrangement, fewer hours in the office, more work from home. It meant a pay cut, but I didn't care. Charlotte mattered more than any promotion. When Dr. Hammond interviewed Nathan, I wasn't present, but Angela told me what she'd heard. Nathan had admitted that he'd felt neglected when I went back to work, that Violet had made him feel appreciated, that he hadn't meant for things to go so far. He'd thought Charlotte would be better off with two parents who were present, even if one of them wasn't her biological mother. The evaluation dragged on for 8 weeks. During that time, Nathan's supervised visits became tense. Charlotte would come back quiet and withdrawn. One day, she told me that Daddy had said if she would just tell the doctor she wanted to live with him and Violet, they could all be happy again. I documented it, sent it to Angela. She filed another motion, this time accusing Nathan of parental alienation. The judge was not pleased. She modified Nathan's visits to include a court monitor and warned him that any further attempts to manipulate Charlotte would result in sanctions. Meanwhile, my relationship with Charlotte was healing. We developed new routines. I started working from home 2 days a week so I could do school pickup. We had dinner together every night, even if it was just frozen pizza. We read books before bed, and I'd ask her about her day, and actually listen to the answers. The little details I'd missed when I was exhausted and overworked. She told me about her friend Zoe who always shared her crayons, about how much she loved music time, about the caterpillar they were watching turn into a butterfly, small things, everything. One night, she asked if Violet was ever coming back. I took a breath and tried to be honest in a way a 5-year-old could understand. Violet made some mistakes, I said. She confused her job with being your mommy. But you already have a mommy. Me. Charlotte was quiet for a moment. I liked Violet, she said finally, but I love you more. I love you most. I held her and cried quietly so she wouldn't hear. Dr. Hammond's report came back in week 10. Angela called me as soon as she'd read it. You need to sit down, she said. Her voice had a quality I couldn't identify. Relief? Vindication? The report was damning for Nathan. Dr. Hammond had concluded that Charlotte's attachment to Violet was the result of systematic undermining of her maternal bond, that Nathan had been complicit in this undermining, whether consciously or unconsciously, that Charlotte's current anxiety and behavioral issues stemmed from the instability and conflicting loyalties she'd been forced to navigate. He recommended that I retain primary custody, that Nathan's visits remain supervised until he completed a co-parenting education program, that Violet remain permanently prohibited from contact with Charlotte, that the adoption petition be permanently denied with prejudice. The final hearing was scheduled for the following month. Nathan's lawyer tried to get the report suppressed, arguing that Dr. Hammond had been biased. The judge reviewed the motion and denied it. The evidence speaks for itself, she said. When the day finally came, I wore the same blue dress I'd worn to my wedding. I'm not sure why. Maybe I wanted to remind Nathan of the promises we'd made. Maybe I wanted to remind myself of who I'd been before all this. The judge reviewed Dr. Hammond's findings in detail. She addressed Nathan directly. Mr. Nathan, you betrayed your wife's trust when you engaged in a relationship with your employee. You betrayed your daughter's well-being when you prioritized that relationship over her need for stability and clarity about her primary attachments. Your actions, whether intentional or not, caused significant emotional harm to a child who deserved better from both her parents. Nathan's jaw was tight. He didn't look at me. The judge continued. Ms. Becca, you made mistakes too. You worked too much. You relied too heavily on paid care. You didn't see the warning signs until it was almost too late, but you also took responsibility. You made changes. You fought for your daughter when it would have been easier to walk away. That matters. She announced her ruling. I was awarded primary physical custody. Nathan would have supervised visits for 6 months, after which we'd review the arrangement. Violet was permanently barred from contact with Charlotte. The adoption petition was denied with prejudice. Nathan would pay child support and split medical and educational expenses. It was over. Nathan left without speaking to me. I gathered my things in a daze. Outside the courtroom, my sister was waiting. She'd taken another day off work to be there. We went to pick up Charlotte from my neighbor who'd been watching her. When I told my daughter we were going home, she asked which home. Our home, I said. Just you and me. She smiled. That's my favorite home. The first few months were hard. Charlotte still had nightmares. She still asked about Violet sometimes. Nathan's supervised visits were awkward and strained. He'd show up with expensive gifts and try to win her affection with toys instead of time. Charlotte would play with them for a day, then forget about them. But slowly, we found our rhythm. I enrolled Charlotte in ballet classes. We started a weekly tradition of breakfast for dinner every Friday. We adopted a kitten from the shelter and Charlotte named her Rainbow. We made our apartment feel like home with family photos and Charlotte's artwork everywhere. Nathan completed his co-parenting program after 4 months. His visits were upgraded to unsupervised, but Charlotte was hesitant at first. She didn't trust him the way she used to. I never badmouthed him to her. I never had to. She'd figured out on her own that Daddy had made choices that hurt people. One day, about 8 months after the final ruling, Charlotte came home from a visit with Nathan and announced that Violet was gone. I felt my stomach drop. Where did she go? I asked carefully. Daddy said she moved away, that they weren't friends anymore. How do you feel about that? Charlotte shrugged. I don't really think about her much anymore. And just like that, Violet became a footnote, a chapter we'd survived. Nathan and I settled into a cold co-parenting relationship. We communicated through a shared calendar app and kept conversations brief and focused on Charlotte. He moved to a smaller apartment, started dating someone new, though he had the sense not to introduce her to Charlotte right away. I started therapy to process everything that had happened, the betrayal, the fear, the guilt. My therapist helped me understand that I hadn't failed as a mother, that working didn't make me a bad parent, that I'd done the best I could with the information and resources I had. Charlotte thrived. She made friends at school. Her anxiety decreased. She stopped having nightmares. She laughed more. She looked at me with uncomplicated love. A year after the custody battle ended, I was promoted at work. This time, I negotiated a schedule that worked for my family. Flexible hours, remote work, boundaries. My boss was surprisingly understanding. Turned out she was a working mother too. She got it. I started dating someone I met through my sister. His name was Felix, and he was patient and kind. He didn't push to meet Charlotte until we'd been seeing each other for 6 months. When they finally met, it was casual and low pressure. We all went to the zoo. Charlotte liked that he knew all the animal facts and didn't treat her like a baby. One evening, after Felix had gone home and Charlotte was getting ready for bed, she asked me if I was going to marry him. I don't know, sweetie. Why? She thought about it. I think it would be okay if you did. He's nice, but you have to promise me something. What's that? Promise you'll never leave me for someone else. Promise I'll always be your first favorite. I pulled her into my arms. You will always, always be my first favorite. Nothing and no one will ever change that. I promise. She fell asleep that night without any tears or questions. Just peace. 2 years after everything fell apart, I attended Charlotte's school play. She was a flower in the garden scene, and she took her role very seriously. Nathan was there too, sitting on the other side of the auditorium with his girlfriend. We nodded at each other. Civil. Distant. When Charlotte came out on stage, she searched the crowd until she found me. Her face broke into a huge smile. She waved. I waved back, my heart so full it hurt. After the play, Charlotte ran to me first. Did you see me, Mommy? Did you see my flower dance? I saw everything, I told her. You were perfect. Nathan came over to congratulate her too. She accepted his hug, but didn't cling to him the way she used to. The easy affection was gone, replaced by something more guarded. He'd broken her trust and she remembered. That night, as I tucked Charlotte into bed, she asked me something that caught me off guard. Mommy, do you think Violet ever thinks about me? I don't know, baby. Maybe. Why do you ask? I just wonder if she misses me, or if she was just pretending to love me because she loved Daddy. Her perceptiveness broke my heart. I chose my words carefully. I think Violet did care about you, but sometimes adults make choices that hurt kids without meaning to. What matters is that you're loved by people who will never leave you. People who would fight for you no matter what. Like you, she said. It wasn't a question. Like me. She smiled and closed her eyes. Rainbow curled up at the foot of her bed, purring. I sat there until Charlotte's breathing deepened and I knew she was asleep. Then I went to my room and pulled out the journal my therapist had suggested I keep. I wrote about the play, about Charlotte's questions, about how far we'd come. I wrote about the mother I'd been, imperfect, overwhelmed, doing her best. And I wrote about the mother I was becoming, present, intentional, whole. The wounds were still there. I'd probably always carry the guilt of those lost months, the fear that I'd failed her when she needed me most. But Charlotte was okay. We were okay. And that was enough. Years later, when Charlotte was in middle school, she asked me about what had happened with Nathan and Violet. By then, she was old enough to understand more of the truth. We sat on the couch with mugs of hot chocolate, and I told her the story. Not the sanitized version, but the real one. About how I'd worked too much and missed important moments. About how Nathan had felt neglected and made terrible choices. About how Violet had taken advantage of the situation. About how we'd fought in court and I'd almost lost her. Charlotte listened quietly. When I finished, she said something that surprised me. I'm glad it happened. What? I mean, I wish Daddy hadn't hurt you, and I wish Violet hadn't lied. But I'm glad you fought for me. I'm glad I know you love me enough to fight. She paused, then added, some of my friends, their parents just gave up. They let the courts decide. They didn't fight, but you did. I hugged her tight. I'll always fight for you. She pulled back and looked at me seriously. I know. That's what makes you my mom. Not biology. Not being there every second. The fighting. The choosing me even when it's hard. That night, after Charlotte went to bed, I allowed myself to finally believe it. I was a good mother. Not perfect, but good enough. And Charlotte knew she was loved. That was the victory. Not the custody ruling or the court orders. The knowledge that my daughter felt safe and chosen and fought for. The scars remained. Nathan and I would never be friends. Charlotte's relationship with him was cordial but distant. She saw him according to the custody schedule, but didn't confide in him the way she confided in me. That hurt him, I could tell. But it was the consequence of his choices. Violet disappeared completely. I Googled her once out of morbid curiosity. She was living in another state, working as a nanny again. I wondered if she'd learned anything, if she'd stopped crossing boundaries, if she ever thought about the family she'd helped destroy. Then I closed the browser and let her go. She didn't deserve space in my head anymore. Charlotte graduated high school with honors. She gave a speech at graduation about resilience and the people who'd shaped her. She thanked me by name, called me her hero. I cried so hard my sister had to hand me tissues. Nathan was there too, sitting in a different section. I wondered what he thought, hearing our daughter publicly acknowledge what he'd almost taken from both of us. After graduation, Charlotte and I took a trip to Paris, just the two of us. We walked along the Seine and ate croissants and visited museums. One evening, over dinner at a small cafe, Charlotte raised her glass of wine. To you, Mom, for never giving up. I clinked my glass against hers. To us, for surviving. We drank and laughed and talked about her college plan. She'd been accepted to her first choice school with a full scholarship. She wanted to study social work, to help families in crisis. I wasn't surprised. She'd lived through her own family crisis and emerged stronger. Of course, she'd want to help others do the same. That night, walking back to our hotel, Charlotte linked her arm through mine. You know what I remember most from when I was little? What? Not Violet. Not the court stuff. I remember you holding me when I cried for her. I remember you promising everything would be okay. I remember believing you. She paused. You kept that promise, Mom. Everything really is okay. And it was. Not perfect, not without scars, but okay. We were okay. And in the end, that was all that mattered. My daughter knew she was loved. She knew I'd chosen her above everything else. She knew that when the world fell apart, I'd fought to put it back together. That was enough. That would always be enough.